My name is Ulysses S. Grant. I was President of the United States at one time. Before I became President, I was a general in the Civil War. I am also on the $50 bill. I did more than just get my face on money, though. I created treaties with Native Americans, treaties that would put them on reservations. I appointed Eli Parker as head of Indian Affairs. I thought he would be best for the job. Turns out he was just as corrupt as people who worked for me. My solution for this was a peace policy. It would replace the corrupt Indian agents with trusted Christian missionaries. The Christian missionaries would teach natives the ways of Christianity, how to farm, how to read, and how to write. After the peace policy, I had the natives move on to reservations. But when they didn't move by choice, I had to have soldiers of the army move them onto reservations forcefully. I gave the commanding officer position to John Gibbon, George Crook, and Alfred H. Terry. At first I didn't give the job to Custer for my own personal reasons, but I eventually had to give it to him because the army needed officers. Custer later died in a battle named Custer's Last Stand. He wasn't all too bright. Things started to settle down after this. That is, until the Indians wanted to go back to their homeland. Instead of doing that, we compromised. I gave them access to hunt on their homeland, and they stayed on reservations. Everything worked out in the end, I guess.
I am Red Cloud, chief of the Oglala Sioux tribe. I am a peaceful person compared to Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse, at least in my mind. Before the Black Hills War, Spotted Tail, Longhorn, and me went to Washington, D.C. and tried to get President Grant to let us keep our land by trying to persuade him to follow the existing treaties. We visited Grant a couple of times, but on May 27th he offered us $25,000 for our land and resettling them into our territory. We all refused such a treaty. This is what started the Great Sioux War, but I didn't take part in the war. One battle that I was in was Red Cloud's War, and I was allied with the Northern Cheyenne and Arapaho. William Fetterman was sent from Fort Phil Kearny with 2 civilians and 79 cavalry to chase away a small Native American war because days before, I and others attacked a wood party. On December 1866, the Native American allies and myself defeated the United States in the Fetterman Massacre, which to that point was most United States casualties ever killed. Frederick Brown accompanied Fetterman, and they were confident to beat us. They disobeyed orders and charged at a small band of warriors led by Crazy Horse on an injured horse, which was a decoy so that we could ambush Fetterman's army. Fetterman and his troops followed Crazy Horse, where he was ambushed by more than 2,000 Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho. After the Fetterman Massacre, the United States sent a peace commissioner who brought peace to tribes, and the U.S. decided to take off all forts and withdraw completely from Lakota territory, which is now called the Fort Laramie Treaty. I feel like I am a good leader when it comes to war because of all the experience I have, especially during my younger years when I got to do some little wars with my neighbors, the Crow, and Pawnee. I am Red Cloud, chief of the Oglala Sioux tribe.
My name is Spotted Tail. I am the head chief of the Brule Sioux. On August 19, 1854, I led an attack on a mail wagon that was on its way to Salt Lake City. I was caught 3 months later on October 3rd and sent to prison. As I was in the prison, I learned how to read and write in English. When gold was discovered in the Black Hills, Red Cloud and I made several trips to Washington. The Black Hills is a very beautiful place to visit. We both wanted to negotiate the right price and value of the gold in the Black Hills. The government had people sign a treaty over the land and gold. If they refused with the treaty, they would be starved. Only about 10% of the male signed the treaty, and 75% of it was required. One of my first battles was against the Utes. They usually meant mountain men. It all started by the Utes slaughtering my people as I came riding in on my horse. The first thing I saw was my people being outnumbered by the UTs. My headman and I came dashing in, firing arrows at the UTs, scaring them off into the woods. The older chiefs, headmen, and the rest of the Relay Sioux tribe thanked me for what I did, and that was how I became a war chief.
I, Mountain Chief, was the main cause of the Marias Massacre. It all started in 1869 when a young warrior, Owlchild, stole several horses from Malcolm Clark, who was a white settler. I was then later informed that Clark had tracked down Owlchild and humiliated him and beat him in front of his camp. Owlchild was furious, so he got me and my mischievous band to get revenge and kill Clark. We ended up killing Clark, and that was the end of it. Until later next year, in January of 1870. I was warned that U.S. cavalrymen knew where I was staying, and they wanted me dead. The reason being, I killed Malcolm Clark. I wasn't going to let them just kill me, so I had to leave the area. Otherwise, I would be dead very soon. I first went downstream, then I went to the Canadian Territory for safety. I was never captured by who was after me, but I did hear the horrible news about the camp on the Marias and what happened to the heavy runner. I feel very guilty for having that happen to all the children, women, and elders. Because if it wasn't for me, they would have never been there. Or if I would have been just captured before they had a chance to get there, and no one would have been killed. Although I feel very bad for the mess I have caused, I don't feel bad for killing Malcolm Clark.
Major Eugene Baker. As the sun started to set, so I could almost see nothing in the distance except mountains and tons of land. We start to set up camp, getting our tents and wood along with food, so we had everything ready for the night. I noticed something off in the woods I could barely see. It wasn't far from the river. I sent my errand boy out to see what it was. I follow with my eyes until I almost lose him. I see him on his way back, and it looks like he is running. Tells me there's an Indian camp about a mile up the river. I came up with the plan of a surprise attack. A battle broke out. A few of my men died, opposed to killing 173 Native American elderly men, women, and children. I also decided to capture and take over 100 prisoners until I discovered the fact that they had a chronic disease called smallpox. To release these prisoners with nothing. Our camp gets word that a band of pagans up the way a little. We set off in search of the camp. We surround the camp and set up. The chief comes out of his teepee with a safe conduct paper. The paper says that you're protected by the government, but it was too late and one of my men had already opened fire and shot the Indian chief. One of my men shot Chief Heavy Runner by accident. He opened fire on who thought was Mountain Chief. We never found the camp of Blackfeet and Mountain Chief, but we did search for miles and miles across the west to the southern part of Montana.
Marcus Reno, The Little Bighorn Battle. June 25th, 1876. I fought in the Battle of the Little Bighorn. I was the highest-ranking officer serving under Custer. Custer was arrogant and he had wanted to attack a village of Cheyenne and Sioux Indians. I had an idea that we would be outnumbered. So I tried to warn Custer, but he was determined to attack that village. Custer had my troops and I attacked from the south. Benteen would be behind me, and Custer would attack from the opposite side. The village was huge. There was about 15,000 native people. When I seen how many warriors there were in that village, I tried to retreat, but instead I just walked right into a fight with the natives. I ordered my troops to dismount and form a scrimmage line, but we were outnumbered. so I ordered my men to fall back along the river. When we were on higher grounds, I told my troops to make a defensive line on what is now known as Reno Hill. By then, 40 out of 140 of my men were killed. Soon Benteen arrived at my position with 3 companies to help with the battle against the Indians. We didn't know how, but the Indians got on higher ground than us, and they fired at us until dark and resumed at the first sight of light. In the morning, a few of my troops seen that the village people were starting to pack their things and head south, so we started heading back. Custer and his troops sadly didn't make it out of that fight. Only a handful of us survived that battle, myself included. All I can say is that we shouldn't have attacked that village.
My name is Frederick William Benteen. I was born in Petersburg, Virginia on August 24, 1834. I was raised in St. Louis and lived there most of my life. Well, at least up to the point I decided to enlist in the 10th Missouri Cavalry for the Union in the Civil War in 1861. Unfortunately, my parents disowned me after hearing this. Turns out they supported the Confederacy more than their own son. When I first started in the war, I was made just a lieutenant, but a while into the war, I was upgraded to lieutenant colonel of volunteers. Hearing this, I guess it felt sort of like a promotion at the time. When 1866 came around, I was made an officer in the Standard Army, and later I was signed up to be a captain in the 7th Cavalry. The day I started as a captain, I met the most heinous human being to ever walk the earth, and his name is George Armstrong Custer. He was obnoxious, self-centered, and honestly, I just couldn't stand that man. What's worse is he was my commanding lieutenant. But being the bigger man, I decided to keep to myself and follow orders. Before the Battle of the Little Bighorn, Custer sent me on a wild goose chase looking for some Indians that weren't exactly there. After feeling so foolish, my group of soldiers and I headed back to join the rest of the troop. On my way back, I was able to help Major Reno fight off the Indians. After assistance from me, we were able to win that little fight. Following that success, a man named John Martin gave me a message from Custer saying he needed my help again. Now this message was a bit hard to understand in the first place, and I got Martin, the Italian man speaking God knows what to me. It was just a disaster. I figured it was Custer needing me to scout another area, so I wasn't exactly thrilled to be possibly sent off to nothing again. And this may have affected my rate of travel. By the time I got back to Custer, hundreds of soldiers and Indians were dead, including Custer himself. Custer had met his maker on June 25, 1876. I continued to fight Indians throughout 1877. I fought in the Battle of the Canyon Creek. I led my group into the Nez Perce War, where I came face to face with Chief Joseph. After the battle in 1877, Major Reno faced a trial for abandoning his post, and I was one of the many who testified at his trial. Reno was not found guilty. In December 1882, I was promoted to major and transferred out of the 7th Cavalry and into the 9th Cavalry. Now, 1887 wasn't exactly my finest year. This is the year I was charged with drunken disorderly conduct. They wanted to throw me out of the army, but President Cleveland pulled some strings and I was only suspended for a year. Suffering from rheumatism and heart disease, I decided to retire in 1888. In 1890, I received an award for my great actions and participation in the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Finally, on June 22, 1890, I died and was buried in Atlanta, Georgia. Since I was such an important man, I was dug up and reburied at Arlington National Cemetery.
The sun had just arose when I was awoken by 2 of my Crow scouts, Goes Ahead and Curly, telling me of smoke coming from an Indian camp in the valley of Little Bighorn. I sat there debating on whether or not I should attack the camp or obey General Terry's orders to wait for reinforcements and more artillery. Think of how famous you'd be, returning a hero from a bloody war, I thought to myself. The image of it were too much to bear. As I ordered everyone to get ready for battle, Captain Benteen looked at me like a coward. He tried to tell me of how many warriors they have, as if he doesn't know how superior I am. Take your men and scout along the valley ridge, I told him. Hours had only just passed, but it felt like days. It was time to write my name in the record book. I gave the order to attack bravely, leading hundreds of soldiers behind me into their sure death, but only one life had mattered, and that was mine. Slaying the few hundred Indians felt so effortlessly, until I looked up from the corpse of a Sioux and saw a great wave of warriors coming right at me. All of a sudden, my superior plan had turned into my last stand.
The U.S. forces made the wrong choice trying to scare us out of the Little Bighorn Valley that day. Once Sitting Bull got the women and children to safety, there was nothing stopping the imminent massacre on the U.S. soldiers coming to attack our village. We attacked Colonel Custer and his troops head-on, without fail. Custer and his men met us in battle. Arrows flew, bullets soared through the air. Behind the lines, Reno and his men prepared to attack us from the south of our position. What fools! We outnumbered Custer's men 3-1 and easily drove his support back into the tree line. We had the U.S. troops running in fear, including Benteen, who was trying to attack from the tree line. Soldiers watched from a distance in horror as the slaughter continued. Warriors attacked Benteen's front on the tree line. Benteen and his men were scared and confused. Benteen was giving orders which he would moments later change. He eventually retreated back to the bluffs with Reno, and as they regrouped, they came to realize Custer and his men following him had fallen. We completely surrounded him and laid siege on him and his men. The barricade of horse bodies that they built did not hold us back. Our bullets and arrows pierced the pile and met their mark, dropping Custer's men one by one. Custer fought hard and fell with his men in the end. Although he was treated a hero, he died the true coward he is.
My name is Sitting Bull. As you may know, I am the chief of the Lakota. It is a hard life for my people on the Great Plains. I was chosen to be chief because of my bravery and knowing I would do the right thing for my people. Keeping my people safe, I would have to take risks. I have been in 3 major battles. The first one was the Red Clouds War, then the Great Sioux War, and the Battle of Little Bighorn. Our sacred Black Hills were discovered to have gold in them. The U.S. Army tried to move in, but I held my ground. I don't like the fact that they think they can just come in here and take what they want. I have now fought in many battles against the U.S. Army and won. They were making forts closer and closer to our lands. I've attacked a lot of forts. More people are joining me to make this great stand. We gathered together to have a Sundance. In the middle of the Sundance, I had a vision. I had a vision that the U.S. soldiers were dropping like grasshoppers. My good friend Crazy Horse went off into battle at Rosebud Creek, forcing the U.S. to retreat. To celebrate this victory, we moved camp to the Little Bighorn River. Crazy Horse and I were joined by 3,000 more to celebrate. June 25th was the day that Custer and the 7th Cavalry attacked me. We had him outnumbered, but he tried to charge into the camps. We had got him to retreat. We killed him and his men, quick. By trying to run away, leaving his men was cowardly. He deserved to die. I've killed, robbed, and injured too many white men to believe in a good peace. If we must die, we die defending our rights.